Hi, ladies. So I have a quick question for you. If you're a married woman and you're struggling with submitting to your husband, or if you're a single woman and you are considering marriage and you've heard about submission and you cringe every time you hear it, my question to you, whether married or single, why? Why do you have such a hard time with submission? Because I've been studying for this Bible study I'm going to do on Friday here on my YouTube. So subscribe so that you get the notification. And something that just came to my mind, and something like just a revelation that the Lord gave me about submission, is that it's actually a heart problem, in the sense of it's an issue of pride that is actually bigger than you submitting to your husband, right? Because when you are having a hard time submitting to a man, it's because you either think that you have something or you know something that's better than he does, right? So you either think you're better than him, you think you're better looking than him, you think that you are smarter than him, you think that you're richer than him, you have a higher status than him, you're a better leader than him. Like, there is something that you believe, whether knowingly or unknowingly, you believe you know or do better than your husband. And it's the reason why you have a hard time following his leadership and coming under his authority. And so my question to you is, what is that thing? Because if you are having a hard time submitting to your husband because of that thing, essentially you have made that thing an idol before God, because God is the one that told you to submit to your husband. God is the one telling us to do that. And I think it's First Corinthians, I want to say chapter 4, but I will find the verse and put it in the description, where Paul was talking to the church in Corinthians, because they were arguing back and forth about which leader they follow, whether it's Paul, Apollos, and all of that. And Paul was telling them, Paul said in that verse that I'm going to find, he said, what is it that you have? What is it that you have that you did not receive? Like, why are you boasting? Because what do you have that you did not receive? And if you received everything you have, why do you boast as if you got it yourself? Because let's say that you think that you're smarter than your husband. Is it not God that gave you that wisdom? If you think that you have like more degrees, more accolades than your husband, is it not God that gave you all of that? If you think you're a better leader, if you think that you have more money, if you think that you have a better status in whatever it is, whatever that thing is that makes it hard for you to submit to your husband, is it not God that gave it to you? And so if the same God is asking you, hey, bring that thing back to me in the way of submission to your husband, and you're resisting that, then you're being prideful towards God. Right? You're withholding. You have made that thing an idol between you and God, because you're saying, God, I'd rather submit to this thing. I'd rather hold on to these accolades, hold on to my status, rather than submitting to your command and your will. And so it goes, the issue that we have with submission goes beyond just our husbands, because every verse that talks about submitting to our husbands says, as unto the Lord. So if you have an issue with submitting to your husband, you don't have a husband issue. You have a heart issue. You have a submitting to God issue. Because before you even come into a marriage and a relationship, you are supposed to have learned how to submit to God, because it says submit to your husbands as unto the Lord. So it's understood that you have learned to submit to God before you come into submission to your husband, right? And so if you're having a trouble submitting to your husband, then your real issue has to do with your relationship with God. You have a relationship with God issue. You have a heart issue that you need to deal with God. It's not even about your husband. No matter what your husband is, no matter what you think is not good enough, whatever it is that you think your husband weakness you think your husband has, that's like the bottom of the issue. The issue is us and our heart posture towards God. Because honestly, when it comes to submission and our relationship with God, we should do things just because God said so. Like, we have to get to a place where even when things are difficult, just saying because God said so should be enough for us to do it. All right? Why do I have to submit to my husband? Because God said so. Like, despite whatever you think you know, despite whatever you think you have, despite how good or smart, strong, whatever, independent, wealthy, whatever you have, if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you submit to your husband just because God said so. Like, that should be enough for you to submit. And so if you have trouble doing it, or if we have, let me not say you, because girl, we in the same boat over here, okay? And the word of God is reading all of us. If we have trouble submitting, it's because we have a pride issue. We have an idolatry issue that we have to deal with the Lord. Because submitting to our husbands is honestly submitting to God. I was having a conversation about this with my husband this morning, and he said something so powerful that I'm gonna leave you with. And he said, "You submitting to let me try to remember how he said it so I can say it correctly." He said something along the lines of submitting to like submission basically has to do with seeing God in the person. So you have to be able to see God in your husband. So if you don't fear God, if you don't submit to God, even seeing God in your husband is not going to change anything in you. But if you're a person that loves and fears God and already submits to God, and you can see God in your spouse, submitting to them is not going to be an issue because you already have that heart posture of humility before God, and you doing you humble yourself before your husband because you love God, because you fear God. So if we are having trouble doing that, we have a bigger issue, and that issue is an issue of pride and idolatry that we have to get to the root cause of and lay it down before the Lord. Because what do you have that you did not receive? And if you received it, why are you boasting about it? Why are you using it as a reason not to obey God when God gave it to you, right? Your degrees, God gave it to you. Your money, God gave it to you. Your wisdom, God gave it to you. Your position at work, God gave it to you. Your experience in life, God gave it to you. And Jesus himself, who submitted unto God and died as a result of his submission, had all of those things. Jesus is wiser than you could ever be. Jesus has more wealth, more glory than we could ever have. Jesus has more power, authority than we could ever have. Yet he accepted to humble himself before God and come and die for the very people that he himself created and allowed them to kill him. So what do you have that's making you puffed up? What do we have that's making us proud, that's making us arrogant, that makes us cringe when the Lord talks to us about submitting unto our husbands? What is that thing? Because whatever it is, God gave it to you. And so if you can't give it back to God by submitting to your husband, you have a bigger issue. We have bigger issues that we need to deal with in our heart posture. So this is just a brief, like that revelation was so powerful that I wanted to just make a quick video about it first, because the study that we have on Friday, the Bible study, you don't want to miss it. So subscribe, because I'm trying to figure out how to not make this video or this live like a 3-hour live, because there is so much power. There's so much peace. Like there's so much safety just in submission. And I feel like the enemy has hijacked that term and stolen and wants to steal and rob us of the goodness, the favor, the grace of God that is in that word. And so I want us to dive deep into it and see the biblical understanding of the word submission, so that we can get back the grace and the favor that comes with submitting unto our husbands. So if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe so that you get the notification once I go live. Okay, God bless you. I love you guys, and I'll see you on Friday. I don't know what time yet, but subscribe so you'll get the notification. Okay, all right.